Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this live worldwide Friday edition, already the 15th day of May. The 15th day of May, 2015. Just amazing that we're already close to halfway into 2015 and beyond. The news is completely Twilight Zone-ish today as usual, but it's only getting more intense. We're going to have open phones today. A free-for-all, any issue you want to raise, any comment, any question. If you disagree, agree, I'd love to hear from you. We're going to do first-time callers in the first hour. The toll-free number is 800-259-9231 on any issue. 800-259-9231. This is the type of news that I have in the stack. This isn't even our top story or even close to it. It just gives you a flavor of the atmosphere. UK Prime Minister David Cameron, just re-elected, came out and said it's not enough to follow the law, you must love Big Brother. That's the headline. That's what Glenn Greenwald, investigative journalist, basically described his statement as. But here's the actual statement put out by the Prime Minister officially. For too long, we have been a passively tolerant society, saying to our citizens, as long as you obey the law, we will leave you alone. And then he goes on to say no longer. They are now trying to put in regulations, now it's not even laws, where they will arrest you if you criticize anything that's politically correct. This is from the conservative Tory. And you notice in Europe, they already have this in some of the countries where they say if you hurt someone's feelings, you can be arrested. That's why you can't criticize ISIS, because that hurts their feelings. In fact, Paul Watson had a special report yesterday I want to play coming up. It's on Prison Planet Live and on Infowars.com, where he breaks down Sweden and other countries are going to have taxpayer-funded programs to bring the hundreds of thousands of ISIS fighters back, I guess tens of thousands for Sweden, to then put them through political correctness training after their trauma. But if you criticize them, you will be arrested. There's a great political cartoon on Infowars.com about two-thirds of the way down on the right-hand side that shows a big pink Trojan horse coming into the castle that says America. And the pink Trojan horse, My Little Pony unicorn, I guess, says political correctness on the side, and Obama's opening the gate smiling up at it, but out of a hole in the back, under the tail, there's an ISIS fighter with an ISIS flag, and he's saying, shh. Well, no, actually, if it was an accurate rendition, it would be Obama and NATO and the globalists loading the Trojan horse full of weapons and ISIS, and then they'd be ordering the men at the gate to open the gate, and then they'd be pushing it in. Because ISIS is Al-Qaeda and is the fighting force being used by Saudi Arabia to destabilize the entire planet. And then the West is financing it so they can clamp down and take liberties on the other end of it and spend trillions fighting the supposed ISIS threat, which they don't really fight. And I said a year ago when they rebranded the name ISIS, Islamic State, out of Al-Qaeda, it's Al-Qaeda flags, Al-Qaeda operatives. And that's all come out in the news in their 5-year war against Syria, that they would let them be resupplied in Iraq, give them big weapons caches, and then send them back in. And they indeed did do that. And then I was watching Fox at 8:45 roughly this morning, almost fell off the elliptical trying to pull my phone out of my pocket. I was listening to music on, because I had closed captions on, trying to get photos of it, and it was at the gym, so I couldn't TiVo it. Somebody needs to go back and find this and play it, but they didn't show it once they came back from break. On the outro, to come back and talk about ISIS, They showed MRAPs rolling down the road with ISIS flags, and I didn't know that we'd given them the big MRAPs that the local police are getting. I mean, this is just crazy. And, of course, the Iraqi government and the president has said and has released video that our government is still arming al-Qaeda/ISIS. But they know our military woke up to this, as we've talked about ad nauseum. Colonel Shaper's been on to document it and back us up on this. We know that they've simply just rebranded it as ISIS to confuse the public so the public doesn't understand that it's all being financed by the West and that it's all basically staged war. Syria's back in trouble. Syria had fought back and pushed back ISIS, but $6 billion of U.S., French, and other taxpayer money wasn't enough to bring down Assad, backed by the Russians. And so they've resupplied ISIS in Iraq, and now they've invaded again into Syria, and they're taking major cities right now, and they're putting to the sword every Christian they get their hands on. Of course, Jews could live in peace there as well. They're being put to the sword, those that they can find, though they were smart enough to flee. The Christians don't have anywhere they can flee. Israel will allow Jews to flee there. Headline, Barbarians at the Gates. Syria says ISIS approaching ancient city of Palmyra. Fox News. It's such a crime. And I had Al Jazeera here interviewing me last night with their American reporter. This guy had the perfect elite New York accent. You know, the one they use in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? I happened to see some of that the other day. It was on cable. Great movie. And when he's got his buddy calling the school to get his girlfriend, he's going, I'm here to tell you something, Buster. You better have her out there right now, or you're in major trouble. Is that understood? And I'm sitting there with this guy from Al Jazeera, and I was so tired of like 7 at night being interviewed, because I was interviewed by a bunch of other radio and stuff yesterday, because I'm so afraid to do interviews, according to Stephanopoulos, on This Week. Boy, didn't he get some instant karma. And not instant karma for lying about us, but just instant karma. I came in and everybody's like, instant karma, instant karma. Like a happy troop of meerkats. What a great crew we have here in the meerkat nest. But that's kind of what the InfoWars operation's like. And he just kept going, isn't it dangerous saying the invasion's imminent of Texas? And he had his producer, super good-looking woman with him, who was smiling at me all fake the whole time and telling me how sexy my voice was. And I was just like, oh, my God, this is going to be the ultimate hit piece. But I sat down, and I'm sitting there, and he's like, well, how you going to feel if something goes wrong after you stirred all this up, buddy? And I was just like, is that a real accent? He had the perfect pinstripe suit. He looked like a 6'4" Ben Affleck. And I was like, I started talking back to him. I was like, how much money are the Saudis paying you through your operation and British intelligence to do this piece? So it should be a really interesting interview if they actually air any of it. But it was just crazy. And I'm here to tell everybody, CBS, NBC, ABC, This Week with Stephanopoulos, I want on your show, dirtbag. I'm sick of you people lying and saying I didn't show up for the interview. When you said, no, we're not doing it live, we said, okay, we're not doing it then, and then you show up a day and a half later to pick me up for the live show 12 minutes before. And Alan Combs was marveling about this yesterday. How's it a big national news story in hundreds of newspapers? And they were asking me from Al Jazeera, so why didn't you show up for the interview, but you're showing up with us? Let's go out to break with Stephanopoulos apologizing for lying. Here it is.
Now I want to address some news you may have seen about me. Over the last several years, I've made substantial donations to dozens of charities, including the Clinton Global Foundation. Those donations were a matter of public record, but I should have made additional disclosures on air when we covered the foundation. And I now believe that directing personal donations to that foundation was a mistake. Even though I made them strictly to support work done to stop the spread of AIDS, help children, and protect the environment in poor countries, I should have gone the extra mile to avoid even the appearance of a conflict. I apologize to all of you for failing to do that.
We'll be back. No, I don't claim it. It's happened. I mean, look at this quote by the Prime Minister of England. For too long, we have been a passively tolerant society, saying to our citizens, as long as you obey the law, we will leave you alone. See, that's what this whole police state's about. The government's getting ready to politically eat our wealth, and they want to get us bullied into line right now. David Cameron's recent language, the London Guardian reports, the measures would give the police powers to apply to high court for an order to limit the harmful activities of an extremist individual. The definition of harmful is to include a risk of public disorder, a risk of harassment, alarm or distress, or creating a threat to the functioning of democracy. And what are they saying on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC this week against yours truly? He's got a right to free speech, but not to yell fire in a theater. And Alex Jones is yelling fire in a theater. In fact, yesterday, with the Al Jazeera reporter, that's how he was talking to me. Well, what if things get out of hand? What responsibility do you have for violence? The government is gearing up for a total takeover. We don't know if it's this summer, a year from now, or when. It's incrementally already happening. And they just keep making jokes about it. Well, the economy's going into free fall. We have a stack of articles on that front. This is a short segment. When we start the next segment, we were able, I guess they went back on our TiVo. I guess it records all the time now. It's not even a TiVo. I just call any DVR a TiVo. It's kind of like in Texas, everybody calls any soft drink a Coke. This is how we do it. Or I guess you call any truck a Ford. I don't know. I guess that's like they call any good-looking woman in Australia Sheila, huh? It's a good name. Let's go out and find us some Sheilas, huh? But we're going to break all of this down coming up in the next segment. Buckley ran back and found it. And I'd forgotten the really bad part about it, and I thought this when I saw it and was reading the closed captioning this morning because I was on the elliptical at the gym. They're like, Obama is telling the media to stop showing video of ISIS in Syria and Iraq in convoys because they've already been disrupted and they're not in convoys anymore. Don't show the convoys. Well, I can watch foreign footage. There's new convoys. And you know why? Because it's Toyota trucks, it's MRAPs, and it's armored Humvees that they didn't accidentally get at bases. I predicted when their whole invasion began that they would accidentally get everything from the bases. You know what they do to the bases? If they can't keep them or give them to the Iraqi army, they fly in special forces in a matter of hours to blow them up in place. That's standard procedure. This was just like Benghazi. Benghazi wasn't an accident. That's come out. It was arming the Al-Qaeda rebels to have plausible deniability. Now we're told, brace for ISIS to attack, brace for Stinger missiles to shoot down airlines, just like we said. So coming up in the next segment, we have all of this footage, and we have Paul Watson's article about the college student confronting Jeb Bush about, quote, his brother creating Al-Qaeda. You know, it's a little bit beyond that. And I'm not even saying Bush did it all. Let's be honest. Jimmy Carter with Zbigniew Brzezinski created what is Al-Qaeda today. Reagan, believing he was fighting the Russians by the early 80s, began ramping it up. And it just continued through George Herbert Walker, through Clinton. Remember when he was protecting bin Laden, wouldn't let him get killed in 96, 97. That came out in the news. FBI just talked about it. And then under George W., there was actually a quasi-war on them, but their leadership was all basically Western intelligence. And now they're just retiring all the old fake heads of Al-Qaeda because it was never really an operational force. It was a cutout. And they've shifted to this real jihad army with real jihadis. That's why I'm saying the terror threat's real. It's still synthetic. It still got built and wound up by the globalists. But speaking of that,